It's finally happened. It's official. Officially official, as they may say. There was no jilting of the Minnesota Vikings by Kevin O'Connell, unlike what we saw 4 years ago when Josh McDaniels said, oh, yeah, you know that thing I told you I was going to do, Colts, I'm not going to do it. O'Connell went through with it. He put his John Hancock at the bottom of the contract, and yesterday he was introduced as the 10th head coach in the storied, but not as storied as they would like, history of the Minnesota Vikings. Let's start with O'Connell talking about a former co-worker in Washington, Kirk Cousins, his future now that O'Connell is the coach of the Vikings.
We started thinking about how we're going to build those systems for him and our other quarterbacks, and really our, the tremendous skill group we have, our guys up front. It takes all 11 to move the football on offense, to run it, to throw it, to score points in the red zone. But I'm anticipating Kirk being a part of what we do.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm excited that he's excited to coach him and lead him, and we're focused on building the team around him that set us up to succeed the best we can.
That was O'Connell with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the new general manager of the Vikings. And by the way, I can't believe I didn't say this. We had our final installment of business suit season when we take head coaches out of their normal attire and slap them in suits to make them even less comfortable during their first meeting with the local media. Yeah. I still don't know why they do that. Look, Kirk Cousins is under contract, duh. The real question is, what happens beyond this year? Something I mentioned last night, Charean. Cousins has a cap number of $45 million this year, salary of $35 million. Because he was tagged twice before by Washington, he would get a 44% raise over his cap number as his franchise tag amount for 2023. That's $63 million in change. So, in other words, he's got the Vikings exactly where he had Washington 4 or 5 years ago, where if they don't get him to sign a contract, he's a free agent with no ability to limit his options. Now, I guess they could do a transition tag at a 20% raise and get a right to match, but even that would be pretty pricey, over $45 million. And I don't know if you remember this. We talked to him 2 years ago, and it sure sounded like he was not interested in doing a new contract at any time between then and the expiration of the deal.
Well, and we talked this offseason about if the Vikings wanted to move on from him, what would they do? Well, it would have to be a trade, and obviously now that doesn't look like it's going to happen. But wouldn't they want to lower that cap number for this season, Mike? When you look at their cap situation, they're $15 million over the projected cap. I'm sure they would like to do that to extend that deal. Now that marries them to Kirk Cousins. The good thing is, if he doesn't want to do that and he has a crappy year, you can move on from Kirk Cousins after this year. I guess that's the good thing if you don't extend him. But if I'm the Vikings, I certainly try to do that to lower that $45 million cap number. But we'll see if Kirk Cousins is interested in doing that. Would you extend him if he would be open to that? Would you do it?
First of all, whoever made that graphic can go straight to hell. Just go straight to hell. I don't appreciate the title. Sorry, Gabby. It's Gabby's birthday. I'm just kidding. Don't go straight to hell. Enjoy your birthday, then go straight to hell. I'm seriously kidding. And I'm fine with it. It's just part of the bit. It's part of the shtick with, the he loves him not. Today, I don't know what to think of it because you're right, Charean. What do you do if you're the Vikings? Do you try to reduce that cap number and commit to Kirk Cousins beyond this year, but then you're stuck next year or the year after that if you decide he's not the guy? Or do you just say, hey, let's go do it? And I was a big proponent. What year was it? Was it 2019 or 2020? There was a year where Cousins and Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman were all in the final year of their contracts. And they all got extensions. I think it was going into 2020. They all got extensions because, lo and behold, they won a playoff game on the road in New Orleans. So let's give everybody an extension because they got to the divisional round and got their asses kicked by the 49ers. Yippee, let's start throwing away money. Let's get drunk. Let's drink the 42 straight out of the bottle and start giving away money because we got to the round of 8. Give me a break. But I remember saying then, let them all go. Let them all coach and work and quarterback their contract year, and if you get to a Super Bowl and win it, great problem to have. Pay everybody. I feel like with Cousins, if he doesn't want to do a reasonable extension that reflects his current value, that realistically assesses the weaknesses in his game. Because even though he's capable of making a the big throw and not in a big spot, but when everything's going well, he still can't save you when the play falls apart. He can't improvise. He can, and all too often when he is in that big spot, he doesn't deliver. And I think he needs to recognize that when he thinks about what he expects from the Vikings if they are going to do a long-term contract. So I'm fine with going forward. Because you know what? He hits the open market. Unless they have a really great year, who's going to step into the same bear trap the Vikings stepped into 4 years ago and give this guy a market deal when he's going to generate great numbers, but he isn't going to take you anywhere? Who's going to do that?
Yeah, nobody's going to do that, Mike, and it's a great point. He's not going to get that much money on the open market if he hits the open market. So if I'm the Vikings, I'd probably take my lumps here, see what he delivers. It's going to cost me more money if I go and win, and he shows that he can be a playoff winning quarterback, which he has only done once in his career. He's won one playoff game. So if he can't do that for me this year, then I'm going to look to move on to somebody better for next year. That's the thing. It's the same thing with me with head coaches and with quarterbacks. If you're going to get rid of the one you have, you better make sure that the next guy is better. You better have a guy in mind that you want to replace either your head coach or your quarterback who's better than the one you had previously. Otherwise, you don't make that commitment to change. So they're going to have to find somebody better. From all appearances of what we heard and saw, at least from Mike Zimmer, Kellerman, and I love Kellerman, but he's not going to be their long-term answer at that position despite being a third-round draft pick. So if he's not the long-term answer, then you're going to have to find a quarterback after this year if you decide to move on from Cousins who's better.
Now, I do know this. Sean McVay has an extremely high opinion of Kirk Cousins, which does not seem to be contrived or exaggerated based on their time together in Washington. Kyle Shanahan obviously has a high opinion of Kirk Cousins. It was in 2017 that Shanahan was waiting until 2018 to sign Cousins as a free agent. One of the reasons he didn't evaluate the rookie quarterbacks in 2017 like a Patrick Mahomes or a Deshaun Watson, he was waiting for Cousins. Someone talked to him into Jimmy Garoppolo on the path to signing Cousins as a free agent. But, those two seats are filled currently in San Francisco and L.A., but O'Connell's part of that same mob. So, maybe O'Connell can draw something out of Cousins that Mike Zimmer, through his offensive coordinators, the guys to whom he threw the keys and said, you go run the offense. And I never liked that. I don't like the defensive coordinator who's a head coach who is completely disconnected from the offense, especially with Zimmer. Zimmer a little prickly, and he had the revolving door, and when they did well, Pat Shurmur was gone, and when they didn't do well, guys got fired, and it felt like it was one after another. It was Norv Turner, and then he was out, and then it was John DeFilippo, and he was out, and then this guy, and he's out, and
Gary Kubiak.
It's good that the head coach is a quarterback guy, a former quarterback. That's what they need. But O'Connell knows what he feels about Cousins. And O'Connell is going to be, I think, a huge influence on whether or not they do explore extending him, because he presumably has a plan to get more out of Cousins, or he knows deep down that Cousins isn't going to get them to where they want to go. Here's O'Connell talking about comparisons between Kirk Cousins and the guy who became the savior for the Los Angeles Rams this year, former Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford.
You coached Stafford for a year. You coached Kirk for a year. Wondering what similarities do they have, if any, and what differences, if any, do they have?
Yeah, Mark, they have a lot of similarities when it comes to the physical nature of throwing the football. I think those guys are elite throwers. Accuracy is the number one requirement in this league as a quarterback from a physical standpoint. We can talk a lot about makeup and obviously the ability to process at the line of scrimmage and play fast. But if you can't be accurate with the football, it becomes very difficult to consistently move the ball for an offense. And I think Kirk, the one thing I've always noticed about him is he's incredibly accurate with the football. He plays with great rhythm and timing and precision. And I think we can build an offensive system like we had in LA to take advantage of that skill set. Matthew Stafford's one of the most talented players I've ever been around. I have so much respect for him, obviously from a physical standpoint, but also that makeup and that ability to process and do a lot of things at the line of scrimmage. And I see Kirk being able to do a lot of those things, and I see us being able to build an offense to maximize what he does best, which happens to be what a lot of quarterbacks, want to be able to do best. A quarterback-friendly system where they can have an attacking mindset, aggressive mindset, but I use this term a lot, on our terms. On our terms to go play the game we want to play it and keep it on our terms. And then when it's time to go make plays to win a game, our guys feel really good about going to do that.
I don't know if you saw, Charean, the physical manifestation of the stress that he was feeling as he was trying to sell that one early on. He did the quick touch of the face as he was addressing the makeup and the ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage and whatnot. Look, there are real differences between Stafford and Cousins. Stafford is the original Mahomes with the, there it is. There it is. He's got to tell. Let's play some poker, Kevin O'Connell. Jim Harbaugh doesn't touch his face when he's giving answers. That's for damn sure. He just looks like he's reading off of an invisible teleprompter, and he's checking every word before it comes out of his mouth. That's a different thing altogether. But, Stafford can do the arm angles and all that stuff, and he's very underrated in his throwing ability. For Cousins, it's very clinical and technical, and he's got the right form. And maybe that's one of the reasons why when the play begins to fall apart, he can't make it happen, because he needs to have the opportunity to get in his right position and throw the ball the way he wants to. He can't do the while he's moving flick of the wrist thing that we've seen from Matthew Stafford and quarterbacks like him. The no-look pass that Stafford threw that was a thing of beauty against the Bengals on Sunday. That's not in Cousins' DNA. You got to work your way around that. So there are differences between the two guys. And we didn't know it until this year when we saw how great Matthew Stafford can be.
Yeah, Mike, and you think about what Matthew Stafford was before this year, and he really changed the narrative. I know we've had some people have had the debate of whether it changed his Hall of Fame candidacy. I'm not talking about that, but it really did change the narrative on Matthew Stafford because the Lions teams weren't that good. And when I look at Kirk Cousins, and I know a lot of people say wins and losses aren't a quarterback stat, I'll buy that. But the quarterback can make his team better. And it just feels like he's been on better teams. But I just looked up at what his record was as a starter, and it's 59-2, exactly mediocre. And he's made the Pro Bowl 2 of the last 3 years. So it just seems like that his team should have been better with the way he played. But he hasn't made the plays when he's needed to make the plays to get his team over the hump. And, Matthew Stafford was 0-3 in the postseason before this year, and Kirk Cousins is, 1-2 in the postseason, I think, in his career before this coming year. But there are some similarities there. But I don't know. I was not convinced Matthew Stafford was going to be what we saw this year from him, and he had a really good year changing teams. Maybe that's what Kirk Cousins ultimately needs, to go somewhere else and get on a different team. He's tried it once, and it hasn't worked out, but maybe that's what he needs, is to go somewhere else and get on a different team. I don't know. Maybe he needs Kevin O'Connell. As you said, his last year in Washington when he was with O'Connell was pretty darn good. 4,000 passing yards, 27 touchdowns. He did have 13 interceptions, but again, the team was 7-9. So I don't know what it is with Kirk Cousins that he hasn't elevated his teams to the next step. And maybe it's the people around him. Maybe they need better people around him. I don't know what it is. But his teams have not taken that next step that it feels like they should have taken.
And maybe that's ultimately what the Vikings are thinking here. If Cousins would benefit from a new environment, let's bring the new environment to Minnesota in lieu of sending him elsewhere and watching him drinking tequila straight out of the bottle at the Super Bowl parade. Let's have him drink his tequila straight out of the bottle here, not here in West Virginia, but there in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I agree with you as it relates to the influence that a quarterback can have on the ability of a team to win. The quarterback has only so much control over who is around him, and we've seen more and more examples of quarterbacks wanting to have more input and influence. Dak Prescott, for example, recently made it clear he wants more input over the personnel that's around him. But there is a way that a quarterback, through his leadership abilities, through the way that he holds teammates accountable, through his study habits, his work habits, everything he does, everything about who he is he a guy that walks through the door and everybody pays attention, stands at attention, is ready to do what needs to be done, wants to please the quarterback the way that they've always wanted to please every coach they've ever had all the way back to Pee Wee football? You either have that or you don't. And I don't think Kirk Cousins, all due respect, has it. Great thrower of the football, but I don't think he's wired to be that natural leader, to be that guy that holds his teammates accountable. I mean, hell, Stephon Diggs, the moment that they signed Cousins to an extension 2 years ago was when he tweeted his way out of Minnesota. And I know enough about the dynamic there that Diggs wasn't a big Cousins fan. And now you got to wonder, is Justin Jefferson a big Cousins fan? Now, Jefferson had a great year. He's had 2 great years. He's had a historic start to his season. But, you know, when we asked Jefferson about it last week, he didn't, get miffed or upset that we were dissing his quarterback. He was like, hey, I can't throw myself the football. And I just can do what I can do. And I feel like Justin Jefferson has the confidence that he'd be great no matter who the quarterback is. So I don't know, Charean. And maybe OConnell is the answer. But I think that the key may be to just go ahead and treat it as a contract year. Let him play. If he doesn't want to do a deal that reduces his cap number, that gives the Vikings flexibility if it doesn't work out this year, if he's going to continue to drive a hard bargain because he can, then maybe the Vikings say, fine, you know what, we'll play out this year, and you want to become a free agent and hit the open market next year and let somebody be duped into giving you a bunch of money, so be it. Because I don't think that another team is going to get fooled the way the Vikings did when it comes to paying him whatever the top of the market is next year.
Well, and if they go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, Mike, and he does earn that money, then you're more than willing to pay that money that it comes with that comes with getting to an NFC championship game or getting to a Super Bowl. You're willing to do that because you've seen it. You have evidence that he can lead your team there. And right now, to me, you don't have that evidence that he can get you to the promised land. And I realize when the Rams, when they traded for Matthew Stafford, didn't have that evidence either. But, you know, this guy's been there for a while now, and if he can't get it done in his 5th season, then I think it's time for the Vikings to move on next year and try to find somebody else that can lead them that way. O'Connell is the choice for Kirk Cousins if he's going to take that step because the two have worked together. He knows O'Connell's offense. They're familiar with each other. If it doesn't work out this year, move on, find somebody else. It's obvious it's not going to work out.
And you made a great point earlier as it relates to the alternatives to Cousins. Obviously, Kellerman isn't ready, but even if the Vikings would look around, who's out there that they could get by way of a veteran that would make you think that guy can walk through the door and elevate everyone? They ain't getting Aaron Rodgers. Packers aren't going to trade him to the Vikings if Rodgers would even want to go play there. They're not going to get Russell Wilson. I don't know that Russell Wilson would be any better than Kirk Cousins right out of the gates. Deshaun Watson, I saw the other day that there's a report that Watson would accept a trade to the Vikings. Look, so much has to happen with Watson that it's not even worth having the conversation at this point because I don't think the Vikings take a chance on him while he has these pending legal issues. So, and I don't know that he'd be any better right out of the gates than Cousins would be. The fact that O'Connell has the history with Cousins is an advantage for the Vikings for this year. The question becomes next year and beyond, and it may just be best for everyone to just focus on this year and see what happens. And if it works, you find a way to keep it going in 2023. And if it doesn't, you know, if the Vikings have a great year, the kind of year that makes teams line up to overpay Cousins, that would mean the Vikings otherwise had a pretty good year, which would mean that when the quarterback carousel starts to spin next year, they'll be in a prime position to sit back and say, hey, come on, where else would you rather play than right here? So I think that if I were calling the shots, and Vikings fans everywhere should be happy that I'm not, I would say don't extend Kirk Cousins. Make him earn his next contract, even if he ends up getting it somewhere else.
Well, and even with that $45 million on your books, Mike, I just find a way around that, reducing other contracts, doing what I have to do. Now, because they're not going to give him an extension, it is going to limit some of the things that you can do in free agency. But you could still find good free agents, sign good free agents, have a good draft again. They have enough talent around him to make this thing work, even with that $45 million cap hit.
And I wonder if there's some sort of a dummy deal they could do that would reduce the cap hit without.
That's true.
And I'm sure they could take some of that $35 million. They could convert it to a signing bonus with voidable years on the back end. And, yeah, they would take some of the cap charge next year. But I'd rather take some next year than all $45 million this year. And I don't know if he has. I need to look at his contract to see if there's any leftover money after he's off the roster this year. But that's an easy way to create some cap space if they really want to. Take the $35 million, signing bonus, voidable years, and then you just push cap dollars into future years when the cap is going to be higher, maybe considerably higher than it is this year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.